request.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, can I?
Madam Speaker, it's been 4 years, and after 15 adjournment debates later, I still keep asking myself every time I stand up to speak of what difference are we making? Madam Speaker, I'm saying this because by all indications and all indices, it seems like the more we talk, the more we try to address issues affecting our people, the worse it's getting. And that's across all indices, whether it's to do with crime, whether it's to do with the cost of living, whether it's to do with unemployment, standards of services, corruption. I mean, it seems that somehow the people not concerned, or the people who are supposed to work together, hold each other accountable, for somehow becoming more and more separated by whatever factors, whether it's animosity or politics or whatever it is. But I find my job very frustrating sometimes, in the sense that things are not looking up. I don't want to start registering on how much we have lost in the last 4 years since we came into office. But we are all around. We all represent constituencies. And after $16 billion of added debt on our national debt, after all the goodwill and the pledges that we stood to enjoy or attract, Madam Speaker, we are still talking about the cost of basic goods and services being unaffordable for the normal Gambian. Madam Speaker, we have represented the Gambians in various ways, not only here in the plenary, but in committees, whether it's to do with environment or whether it's to do with security, health, all across. And it's definitely frustrating in some instances that all this monies that we are investing in these sectors, it seems, I don't know, for whatever reason, but some areas are not seeing the benefit of these investments. For example, in the security sector, we just concluded, as we were discussing earlier, a tour of the nation, of the country, across military and police, also immigration, fire services, and other installations in the security sector. And Madam Speaker, some of the conditions some of these officers are exposed to in terms of both personal and official or operational resources is just unacceptable. Like, for example, the Ministry of Interior, I think it's arguable that it's the second most allocated ministry as far as the budget is concerned. But 70% of all their fuel that they use is consumed between Banjul, Serekunda, and Brikama. The rest of the country is struggling to even provide the basic of security needs to the people that they serve. There is no good operational vehicle between the police or the military to be able to do the basic of their jobs. And yet, you look at the Ministry of Defense budget, you look at the Ministry of Interior's budget, you ask yourself, no, where is this money going to? I know there are budgets, but again, if you look at the execution of these budgets, now we can see that they are very highly prioritized. Madam Speaker, it's been mentioned here the scarcity of fish in our exclusive economic zones. And yes, we did agree and ratified an agreement here between us and Senegal, but also us and the EU in good faith. Because the promises the minister made and his team was that there are very attractive benefits that we are supposed to enjoy, especially within the first 3 years of the contract, in terms of capacity building, in terms of monitoring, and other benefits of training and passing off, what do you call it? The transfer of knowledge and experience to our Gambian citizens who will be able to monitor our ozons after some time. But Madam Speaker, it's evident that this is not happening, and we are losing stock of our blue economy, and these agreements are not cast in stone. Therefore, I would urge the Committee on Environment to engage the ministry and see if we need to revisit this agreement and take it from there. Madam Speaker, in the early days, we were talking about the NDP. After costing the NDP, it costed the Gambia $2.4 billion, of which our development partners were very keen to support us with 62% of that money, which was equivalent to $1.7 billion, to make sure that across especially 7 sectors, youth, tourism, agriculture, you name it, they are all part of priority areas where we need to develop. But apart from the politics of it, nobody's even talking about this NDP again. Because among all the other reforms and other development agendas that we so much we are enthusiastic about, all failed. And of this 1.7 billion that was promised, the Minister of Finance did stand here and attest to the allegations that we lodged that less than $300 million was actually committed. So we lost $1.7 billion because of the lack of our resolve to ensure that all what was agreed, at least a good part of it is achieved. Key of which, or cardinal of which, was the draft constitution. We mentioned about the security sector reforms. But Madam Speaker, some things you cannot just put your finger on because you have no evidence to prove on, and it would be foolish of me to stand here in front of this parliament to make claims without proving facts. But after all the investments, the consultations, the conferences, all over the world, one thing that is lacking is the political will. And it's not that, and I mentioned this when I used to stand there, that the people concerned or the parties affected are not against these reforms. If anything, our last store engagement with these security actors proved that they want reforms. But reforms that they can take ownership of, because this is not somebody else's job to come and tell us how we should conduct. But the lack of reform means that we are leaving our security actors exposed to threats and situations, conditions that they cannot even do their jobs. Most of the security problems that we are facing in this country it's not because the police don't want to do their job or the army don't want to respond to threats. It's because they don't have any resources or any capacity to do so. And this is something that, like I said, I keep asking myself, why do I even have to stand here and start complaining about the same thing that is not going to yield any dividend? Madam Speaker, I used to stand here and complain about corruption and corruption and corruption, and many people would see us as being political. But I'm glad that the government itself now have mustered the courage to accept that we are one of the most corrupt countries in our sub-region. And therefore, even going as further as seeking the World Bank's intervention to come and support us. But realistically, since when was the anti-corruption bill tabled in this parliament to be passed so that we can clamp on corruption and make certain acts punishable by law? But again, we are not taking those steps for ourselves. How do we expect the World Bank to come and help us without the political or moral will to do so? Madam Speaker, like I said earlier, the increased flow of illicit drugs into the Gambia is unprecedented. And we have just understood that out of the 14,000 students that just graduated at grade 12, about 4.2%, about 6 to 800 people, we are the only ones qualified to enter into university level or tertiary education. Madam Speaker, the rest of these kids can be exposed to the abuse of drugs. Especially, like I was saying earlier, if these drugs, which is mainly cocaine, are converted into crack, which is cheaper and more affordable by these kids. We are playing with fire, and there's no amount of talk that could actually solve some of these problems, if at all we don't, just for once, like all the honorable members were saying, come together, overlook our differences, and understand that people who are opposed to you and talking in advance to what you like are not your enemies, but stakeholders in the development of our country. So my time is almost up. I don't want to go in the other areas that I will not finish, but I'm just appealing to everyone, both the legislature, executive, and the judiciary, for us to look at these things, carefully, and understand that, like the honorable member for nominated member Ndeyasi said, no one is going to come and support us and build our country. It's ourselves, and we are at a crossroads. We either can make it or break. And if you don't do what is needful, and understand that governments will come and go, but this country will remain. We'll be all in this mess together. And like the others will say, it doesn't matter who you are or which political party you represent, the cost or the burden of the livelihood that we live, we are all going to be exposed to it. Whether it's the cost of our daily meals or the security threats that we all face. Madam Speaker, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable Member for Upper Salem.